Hmm. Nice to see you, Elaine, from Pune, and Venerable Tempa, I guess. Yeah, must be
Good
boring
evening,
up.
Kabir Ji.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. And good evening to everyone. And to our friends from Dehradun, Nandita Ji. So, and whoever else there is. So, it's good to be back at Tushita with new tiles and paint, glowing statues. You can't hear me? No. Yeah, I wonder what happened there. Is that better now? Are the speakers working here, or it's not necessary? Maybe not necessary. अजीर जी सुनाई पड़ रहा है ना? पहले नहीं सुनाई पड़ रहा था. I think I must have been nervous at the beginning. It'll soon go. And also I've been on a very fast motorbike, Uber motorbike from Vasant Vihar, who got here in 10 minutes, which was amazing. And never been so fast. But it's good, because otherwise I'd have been late if I'd come in a car. So, and I'm being revived by a delicious cup of tea made by Yash, our volunteer. So let's start with some quiet. And Venerable, yeah, thank you for joining. Really, you must be getting bored up there in the dormitory, so to be listening in on this. But thank you for being there. Yeah. So let's sit appropriately, upright if possible. And just gently bring your attention to the body as you sit upright but relaxed, with the front of the body open, the back upright. All of this has extraordinary significance, really. What is so lacking in us, despite our bravado and so forth, is a lack of self-esteem, lack of proper attention, and lack of proper taking care of ourselves. In short, a sort of lack of healthy self-confidence. So sitting upright like this may help us to reestablish some kind of a sense of dignity, you might say. Dignity, I think, good word. Doesn't have to be just applied to aristocrats or kings and queens. We can have dignity. Anybody might possess dignity, a beggar, anybody. And from one point of view, of course, the Buddhist teachings are saying that we all possess extraordinary basic dignity, in the sense of basic goodness, basic dignity. And then the front of the body will naturally be somewhat open and not cramped or slumped. So that's also a powerful statement, I feel. It means we're not going to hide within ourselves, although, of course, we need to take care of ourselves and not expend all our energy outwards. That would be very exhausting. But it does show that we are willing to connect and communicate with the world, with others. And that's very important. And of course, it's very difficult. Those of you who work in organizations or whatever, we all have someone we relate with, even if it's your local cat. And we know how difficult it is to sometimes communicate openly, clearly, and with kindness. So here the posture seems to suggest that we should at least make that attempt to open to others, open to the world. And especially in, you could say, in this vast vehicle of the Mahayana, where we do attempt to understand what is happening in the world, what is happening with others, based on what we also have seen in ourselves, which is a sense of anguish, even we could say, unsatisfactoriness. So here we're ready to communicate with the world on the basis of that understanding, that other people like us need kindness and care, proper attention. So I've already said too much. Let us forget for now, or let go of the words, and just abide in being content with the posture wherever we are, and bringing the attention to the breath. There can be that sense of relaxing and letting go with the out-breath, so long as that doesn't compromise the basic state of being alert, aware. Attentive. And as the great master, Lord Atisha, reminded us in his teachings on the basic path and on calming the mind, he said it's very important to relax, to have that sense of calm and relaxation. He seems to suggest that nothing happens really very effectively in meditation if we are pushing too hard or striving too hard. Gently breathing in, and that sense of relaxation and letting go with the out breath. And then to deepen our motivation, let us remember the kindness of others, the really unfathomable almost kindness of other beings. A traditional Buddhist would go back beginninglessly to the beings who have been helping us beginninglessly. But here we can just focus, if you like, on your parents of this life. And if you didn't know your parents, then your biological parents, at least you realize that there were parents in the sense of a father, mother, through whose union this body is produced, which we are now using to try and achieve some happiness or some transcendence, whatever. And of course, countless beings, apart from parents. One doesn't have to look very far. For me, it's very clear every day. And just now, I was very worried I wouldn't get here on time. And this Uber motorcycle wala brought me here in about 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes from Basant Vihar. So I'm so grateful to him. So grateful that I didn't have to rush in late. And he was riding a bike that I presume he hadn't made himself. So, so many people involved in getting us from here to there, getting the food on our plate, all of that. Extraordinary network of connections, the clothes we wear, the meditation halls we sit in, all due to the efforts, or we might say, the kindness of others. And then hopefully all of us have some friends, people we can share ideas, anxieties, whatever, loving kindness. Where would we be, a lot of us, without our associates, without our friends, sometimes very long-lasting, loyal friends? What would life be like without them? And then, of course, some of us have spiritual guides. Or teachers. And the authors of many authentic texts and books, listening to whom and reading which can bring such profound peace and insight, let alone, the deeper levels we might attain through reflecting and meditating, but just listening sometimes to teachers, authentic guides, and reading authentic literature. It's so rewarding. So this is all due to the kindness of others. And the kindness, of course, the fact we can understand these texts and so forth is based on our intelligence. And where does our intelligence come from? It comes from being a human being. We got this human life. We're not born as just a yapping dog or meowing cat, however wonderful those beings may be. We have this extraordinary intelligence, discrimination in the finest sense of the word. And this human life we owe to our, it is said, and we can investigate the teachings on this, it is said to be the result of wholesome lifestyle, wholesome action, good qualities like generosity and so forth, and so forth. So where do they come from? You could say there are many causes, but one major cause is the example of others and the teachings of others helps us develop these qualities, which are now bearing fruit as a human life. Why are beings born as animals or slugs? If we investigate the teachings, we get some very powerful, interesting answers. Anyway, these kindness of others, and then these beings not only kind, but they are like me, like all of us, also in a state of uncertainty, state of anxiety, a state of having a crowded mind, which is like having sometimes a civil war going on in the mind, which can develop into a very hellish sort of state. So beings are going through that, all these kind beings. They want to be happy. They don't want unpleasant experience, just like you and me, just like your best friend doesn't want it. And it's due to these beings that we can train our minds deeper and deeper. Even the teachings say those who harm us, physically harm us, mentally harm us, cheat us, lie to us, harm us physically, that we can also see them as being kind, not that they are trying to be so, but we can see how they help us. They may help us develop deeper qualities of patience, tolerance, understanding of karma, understanding of samsaric existence, understanding of the deluded states of mind. Sometimes we might forget those aspects if we only have wonderfully kind people around us all the time. We might become complacent. So even the harm givers, they're so kind. Which does not mean that they should not go to jail, some of them, they should, but they're still very kind from one's own point of view. The judge sentencing them to jail will not see them that way, but we can see them that way. So by generating this motivation together and by being here in order to listen to some sharing and whatever follows, discussion, may it be beneficial for all of us, and may it help us to really see how the self-centeredness, this holding on to the I, holding on to ego, is something that, yeah, we can give the ego the sack, in a sense. We can make the ego unemployed. Okay, so some of you have heard very, very amazing teachings from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Dorje Damdullah, and other great teachers, of course, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, on emptiness, on ego, and so forth, directly or indirectly. This is not going to pretend to be anywhere, even approaching that. It'll be a slightly different take on it, although I hope useful. So please don't expect me to launch into Madhyamaka Prasangika teachings. I cannot do so. There was a time when I passed an exam on it, but if I were given that exam today, I would fail. But hopefully what we're going to look at, what we can discuss also, may be useful. It's always good to hear something on this topic. And don't forget, it's always your own extraordinary mind, your own extraordinary perception, which is taking in these words and using them according to your intelligence, according to where you are, if there was a dog sitting in this empty seat to my right, they might not get too much out of my talk, they'd get a lot more if I had a biscuit in my hand. But all of us can benefit due to so you should be thankful to your mind. I may not say anything very profound. Most likely I won't. But because of your mind, you can make something very useful for yourself. Really. This is the whole basis of what we call the four reliances in Buddhism, which I think is very good to remember again and again. I find it very useful. The four reliances, as you may know, excuse me, the older students here. First reliance is not to rely on the teacher, but to rely on the teaching. And the second is not to rely on the words, but to rely on the meaning. Yeah. Third is not to rely on the superficial meaning, but on a deeper meaning, deeper level of meaning, the authentic meaning. And fourth, and this is what we need to emphasize, I think, a lot, not to rely on a superficial or distracted state of awareness or consciousness, but to rely on what some teachers call a wisdom consciousness, to rely on one's own innate ability to go deeper with a deeper level of awareness, I'm not talking anything esoteric here, but it just means a mind which is calmer, which has more insight, and is not caught up with the daily sort of subliminal gossip, which keeps on happening in our mind. So I find this is a very useful teaching, Okay, so, and what follows, I'm totally indebted to, of course, not only my teachers, but to a very, very useful book by Alan Wallace, who many of you know personally. Maybe you've received teachings, but you may have heard him online or been to a retreat of his. He's one of the, I think, very, very, very good Western scholars and practitioners, someone who's practiced a lot. So that is always good to read words from someone who's practiced a lot. Of course, hearing my words, you're at a disadvantage because I haven't practiced a lot. I've run around a lot, but I haven't practiced a lot or sufficiently deeply. But even with a good motivation, we listen to authentic words from a good practitioner like Alan Wallace. Then, due to the alchemy of one's own mind, consciousness, awareness, one can convert it into something useful. So when we talk about ego, what are we actually talking about? What do we mean in a general sense? There may be different interpretations, different definitions, of course, in modern psychology, according to Freud, according to Jung, according to so-and-so, there may be different ways of talking about it. Here, what we are talking about is a kind of holding on to a sense of identity of me, which is inherent also in our language. When we say I, after I, there's usually something else has to follow, right? I am, I see, I do, I eat, I like, I don't like. There is that sense of a real concrete being or essence somewhere here, you know? And it gets exacerbated, exaggerated, the more we connect or relate to what we see as external objects, another person, a clock, a cup of tea. If I see a cup of tea, which I know is made by an authentic tea maker, like Yash here at Tushita, then the I gets aggravated even more. Aggravated meaning, tea. I want that tea. It's all reinforcing a sense that there is a real entity here, which is really seeing a real cup of tea, which is going to make me, at least temporarily, if I do remember a bit of Dharma, then I'll say, okay, yeah, it will temporarily make me happy, but it will make me happy temporarily. So again, who will it make happy? Me. It's not making you happy. It's making me happy. And I'm a real person here, sitting here. And you ask me to prove it, I'll say, look, I have real, not much, but some flesh. I have bones in there. Otherwise, the flesh would just collapse like a sack, empty sack. There's something real here. I have memories. I can show you my childhood photos that I was looking at yesterday from London. I lived in London. I love London. I loved London. I can remember London of the 60s. The kind of atmosphere of it, the zeitgeist of it, I can almost remember that. I'm real. Don't tell me I'm not real. Of course, Buddha is saying I am not as real as I think I am. Lord Buddha in his teachings, and some teachers go as far as to put it this way, and one doesn't know whether to call them a spiritual friend or a spiritual enemy. They say your emotions, your ego, does not exist, has never existed, will never exist. A real emotion, one teacher says, never existed, will never exist, a real emotion. But, we're full of emotion. We're full of emotion. I'm full of emotion. All the time, emotions are coming and going, and I'm identifying with them. So this seems to be part of the problem, doesn't it? It's what we call reification, a word I've been hearing a lot, reading a lot with Alan Wallace. But today, for the first time in my life, I decided to actually look it up. And of course, I didn't look it up in an Oxford dictionary because I didn't have one, but I did look it up on Google, and I guess it's relatively correct. I don't know what Google is relying on, but to give a definitive value or form to an abstract concept. To give a definitive form or value to an abstract concept, to make it somehow concrete, more concrete than it needs to be or is. They also say treating something as a concrete object. So I guess a child, or even, us, we see a rainbow, then it disappears. Maybe the child becomes very upset. Expected it to be more real in the sense, more lasting, kind of permanent. But it goes. And then the sandcastle, of course, making this beautiful sandcastle, which is so wonderful, so concrete. And then some elder child comes, or the sea comes in and is gone. You see it disappearing in front of your eyes. That sandcastle. So reification. We have this tendency, and where does it come from? Well, I guess the teaching would say since beginningless time, we've been doing this. There's been beginningless ignorance together with this beginningless innate dignity and basic goodness. But there's also a kind of co-emergent beginningless ignorance, of grasping, holding on. So, yeah. Why, how does this keep on getting played out? So what we'll do in the time available is look at one way of seeing how, in a simple way, but very, very, very good, I find, how ego develops. And then first I'll look at some factors which help exacerbate, which aggravate this sense of I. And of course, with I, we have me. With me, we have mine. And all of that plays out, doesn't it? I, me, mine. Which leads to tremendous problems. I mean, one could talk about this for a long time, but it would be a kind of a distraction. My country, my flag, my land, my history, my history is more important than your history in this place, for example. These kind of things are playing out in the Middle East right now. And they're playing out everywhere, of course, to some degree. This is mine, this is my territory, my space, my idea, my opinion. The list is endless, and it just all keeps on aggravating this sense that there's a real person, and if you have a real person, a real me, a real I, you have to defend that. You have to defend it, and you have to go after what you feel will make it feel better, make it feel comfortable, make it feel safe, secure. Don't we? We're doing that all the time to make it feel comfortable, to make it feel relaxed, because we're so unrelaxed. Because the space, and this is an important word, space, it's going to come up again and again. And there are some Buddhist teachings where you will read space every other line. Certain teachings of so-called higher teachings, you might say, or certain kind of teachings mention space a lot. So we have crowded that space. It's like you have a beautiful space to begin with, and you decide you really need to put a lot of objects in that space. Have you ever had that experience? I think Yash is experiencing it upstairs. There was a lot of space in the volunteers' room upstairs. And then someone, out of kindness, of course, offered a huge bed, a king-size bed to a Dharma center. I mean, what do we need king-size beds for? We're very, 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 what shall I say? We're very saintly and high-living people here. We don't need king-size beds, So it's taking up all this space. There's less space. I think you can still do a full-length prostration there, but and you can still do yoga there, but the space is constricted. So, if you close your eyes and try to watch your breath, what I do, especially after a hectic day running here and there, then do you experience a lot of space in your mind? If you do, wonderful. If you do, that's so wonderful. But just make sure you haven't been tranquilized or, somehow knocked on the head. But if you are naturally feeling spacious, that's fantastic. A lot of times you will not feel that. There will be crowded thoughts, emotions, feelings, memories, images, plans for tomorrow and next year or whatever. And will this get done? Will that get done? What will this person say? So the crowdedness. And of course, where there's a crowd, where there's all this happening, of course, you feel it's all real, makes it more real. When there's too much space, then I think we feel insecure. We need to fill the space to remind us that we exist. I really exist. So spaciousness in that sense is a threat, like silence for many people. Silence, or being in a place where you're alone, even for a little while, can feel a bit threatening. So we need to maintain control. That's a big, big thing. We need to maintain control. What does Wallace say about that? He speaks very well about this. This reified sense of ourself often manifests as the need for control. By the way, this is page 179 in this wonderful book, Minding Closely, 4 Applications of Mindfulness. Snowline, I believe. Snowline, yeah, 2011. This is a thick book, but if you are someone who is blessed with some time and so forth, one can read books like this if you're really old-fashioned. Otherwise, just Google it, you know. Sorry, I'm joking. So we exercise control over body, mind, possessions, even other people. Our reach may be very vast. Some people seem intoxicated with power, expressing the drive to validate themselves. I have control and power over others, extensive wealth, and a large dominion, so I am worthy. We all would like to think of ourselves as being of value, not worthless. Control is central to this self-concept. Feeling helpless and out of control is most unpleasant. So here he's relating it to the fact that in the beginning stages of shamatha, one works a lot, one begins to work with the breath, you know, with just being with the breath. And if one begins to do that, and the only time I've really experienced this is in a 10-day retreat with a very, very, very good, I would say, very skillful and wise Italian monk for 10 days. One sees how one never really, hardly ever one is able to just be with the breath and not have this sense of I am breathing. I am breathing, and there's always that subtle duality of there's somebody here who is watching the breath and inevitably controlling it, however subtly one is controlling the breathing process. We're not talking here, of course, about pranayama, where we are deliberately controlling how we breathe. We're just talking of ordinary breathing in, breathing out, watching the breath, letting go of thoughts, not holding on to them, letting go, coming back to the breath. So in that, it's just one is always trying to control it. However subtly, there is not that sense of there's just breathing happening. One person in the course I did, in the discussion period, had explained how he did have regular moments where there was just the breath. There was no sense of anybody watching or trying to control the breath. And the teacher was very happy to hear that. It's not normal. It's not normal to be able to let go like that. Just be with it. So ego, or this self-grasping, I won't say self-centeredness, because that's a kind of psychological, behavioral manifestation of the basic cognitive holding on. So we could say more precisely or more correctly, self-grasping, this grasping at a me, this reifying me, I, that is going on all the time. So much so that we can't even be with the breath in a totally natural, spontaneous way without wanting to somehow control it or feel that I am doing it. I am doing the breathing. It is so innate, this grasping at a me, a real me. So what is making it worse? In the Buddhist teachings, we speak of also the 5 hindrances, 5 factors that, of course, make the self-grasping ignorance even sort of stronger. We speak of sensual engagement, attachment. Yeah, we have attachment, craving. Craving, of course, is given in some teachings as the cause of suffering. Second noble truth, cause of suffering, craving, wanting, holding on to anything. It's not just wanting something, but it's holding on to anger, holding on to jealousy, that sense of holding on to something, grasping at it. Then there is, after craving, we have, of course, or this sensual wanting attachment, we have malice or harmful intention, a harmful state of mind, which is connected with all forms of irritation, anger, pushing away, aversion, and so forth. Then we have, in the context, especially of meditation, we have mental excitement. And Wallace also puts anxiety together with excitement. I guess he is knowing, he's a great scholar, so I guess he is also quoting from original sources, probably Abhidhamma sources, where excitement is also connected with anxiety. So it's interesting to look at that link. If we were totally calm about things and less speedy, which is what excitement is about, isn't it? Speediness. And then if we had, then we would be much more calm and without anxiety if there was just a sense of non-excitement. But excitement breeds also the anxiety with it. It's that busy state of mind. Then we have, again, more, especially in the context of meditation, we have lethargy, laziness, lethargy. Yeah. And then we have uncertainty or doubt, uncertainty. That can also lead to a lot of anxiety and overthinking. And let's also recognize that because of our very cerebral, intellectual kind of education, most of us have a strong thinking capacity. And I don't mean critical thinking or proper thinking, but there's a lot of thinking going on, a lot of ideation, a lot of thinking, conceptuality going on in terms of thinking. And if we look at a kind of model, because of my interests, I found the Jungian model useful, where he speaks of thinking and feeling as two opposites or pole. Thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition. So sensation, intuition, thinking, feeling. 4 ways of looking at how we might relate with the world, relate with ourselves. And we all have 1 or 2 of those dominant, and most of us have 1 or 2 of those quite weak, those 4 factors. Thinking, whether we know it or not, we are encouraged to think. We read, we hear words all the time. Of course, some people have very strong feelings. Of course, we're not saying we don't, but our education doesn't help us deal with our feelings, does it? With our emotions, with our feelings. Modern education doesn't help us. Increasingly now it is. It's wonderful. The initiatives taken by His Holiness and others, very, very wonderful, intelligent people who've put together C-learning and many other things, many other ways of helping a child to develop understanding of the whole person and expressing that in the world. But it's still not enough, not nearly enough. So to come back to the point, we think a lot. We think. And we buy into that thinking. We somehow feel it's real. So all of that makes us feel there is something very powerfully concrete and real going on in this, what we call a person. And of course, we don't just call ourselves a person, we call ourselves me, Kabir, me, which makes it more, powerful. I'm not just a person. I'm me. I'm me with all of my whatever, garbage, good qualities, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me. All good things come to an end. And this wonderful cup of tea has come to an end. Yep. So these 5: sensual craving, malice, laxity, excitement, anxiety, uncertainty, doubt, all of the thinking that goes around them, and also the emotionality. If you have a strong emotion, like anger or jealousy, or craving, desire, that really makes you feel, doesn't it? That, oh, this is real. I'm real, so real. And if I don't get what I want, then it's suffering. I get what I want, then there is temporary happiness. And then, of course, fear of losing it, of what we have. So we'll have some discussion soon. Otherwise, I can go on and on and on. And we can look at some of the practices that some of you may have been doing, which you feel are helping reduce this sense of I, me, mine, and which render ego unemployed. And there's, of course, a twist at the end coming, kind of, So I've mentioned control. I think we need to mention speed, the speediness, being in a hurry, being impatient. This leads to tremendous holding on to self, whether it's the fear, if you're on a speeding motorbike, that you'll get hurt, or whether it's just this sense of, I must get something done quickly, or the mind is just rapidly moving from one thought to another. All of that is creating a sensation that, yeah, this is an amazing organization I have here. This thing called Kabir is an amazing organization. And all of these people in there, talking and communicating with each other. There's such a buzz going on in the central headquarters, in this office, in this vast organization, busy organization. It is so real, this organization, which is Kabir. We don't even say it's called Kabir. The French are more intelligent, it seems. They say, I am called Kabir. Je m'appelle Kabir. But we don't. In English, we just say, I am Kabir. I am. Am makes it feel very solid. I am. The French say, I'm called Kabir. It's a name, man. Relax, almost, they're saying. It's not real. It's just you're called that. We need to call you something, so we'll call you Kabir. Who is Kabir? What is Kabir? Who knows? Shantideva says space. Even the great Shantideva, well, what I mean by that is he's not in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. He's not speaking as a kind of a Mahamudra or Dzogchen master, right? He's a scholar propounding the Prasangika view. But even in that 9th chapter, my favorite line, one of the few lines I like, I don't understand it, but I like it. The rest I find very difficult. He says, oh, you who are investigating reality, please recognize, as I have done, that all is just like space. He doesn't say it is space, it's like space. I think that's so amazing. You're investigating, you've been going through all these lifetimes of suffering and holding on and thinking, your thoughts and your emotions, and all of this is so real, so me. And he's saying it's like space. It's space. It's like space. It's kind of, oh, just the words somehow. Optimistic is not what I really mean. They're like, it's like there really is some light at the end of the tunnel. You're in a dank, dark, dirty underground prison, but you see that spot of light out there, and there is space. There is some light. There's a sky out there. Although you're down in the smelly cocoon of a dungeon, you know, engaged in a daily civil war. But out there, there's space. There's space. Anyway, so we were talking of speed and we got to space. Then, of course, we have our friend distraction. We have distractions all the time, you know, which are embarrassing and prevent us from being calm and clear, because they're just all the time coming up. And if we, as all of us now, are proud possessors of our various gadgets, it's hard not to be distracted. You know, my excuse for checking the Guardian website 20 or 30 times a day is that my brother lives in the Middle East. Now, look, come on. Okay. So does that mean you have to check the news 30, 40 times a day? You know, it's become a habit. It's a distraction. It emphasizes certain things about me which feed my ego and make me want. It makes me crave. Just thinking about the Guardian website makes me kind of excited. The way they present it, the colors, the way they do it, I find it much more attractive than the BBC website. So I'm a Guardian man. I am a Guardian website person. I'm not just a person. You know, I'm all of these things which go to feed this sense of who I am. So anyway, distractions, they also become very helpful for the ego. Totally, the ego depends on this. This is the food of the ego. These constant distractions, which keep on reminding us of who we are, or what we think we are, or what we want to be, and what we don't want to be. All feeding this sense of self, constantly. One teacher speaks of the power of flickering thoughts to come back to thinking. You know, you could be sitting very quietly. You have a little thought. You may be even appreciating some music or looking at a tree, or enjoying your coffee. But then this thought, a little thought comes in your mind. And then that thought can grow. The thought produces more thoughts, more thoughts. The monk who led that Vipassana retreat in Bodhgaya years ago, I mentioned, he said, it's like you're walking to Bodhgaya Stupa, and your intention is go to the Mahabodhi temple and do circumambulation. But on the way, and this was his example, not mine, the flickering thought of a cup of tea would be nice, you know. So the thought comes, the thought goes. And then again it comes, you know, that thought. And by the time you get close to the Mahabodhi Stupa, you avoid the entrance and you go to the chai stall. And I'm very familiar with this distraction. You can go to the Nimbuwala chaiwala who carries the ketli with him around. You give 10 rupees for very tasty non-milk cup of tea, or you can go beyond the temple to Deepu chai stand. It's very busy there, but it's fantastic chai, and he also has other things you can nibble on, you know, and also Sai tea stall next to him, very good. So before you know it, the temple is a kind of a memory. and you are now immersed in your tea, you see. So it's a flickering thought came as you went to the temple, and it built up. I guess like hurricanes don't start immediately, do they? They start slowly. I don't know how long. I'm not into meteorology or anything. Is that the right word? Meteorology? For weather? Yes. So I don't know how they start, but they must start a little slowly, meaning they don't all build up in 10 minutes. And then next thing you know, in a few days or whatever, you have this hurricane which can destroy buildings. So our thoughts are like that. Flickering thought, next thing you know, and then again you can get distracted. Then I see Jamaluddin, my friend Taylor, across the road from Deepu Chai Stall. Then I go and start talking to him. And there's lots of things to talk about because we've known each other 40 years. So then one thing leads to another, and oh, now it's time to go back to Root Institute. And your visit to the stupa is not happening. So flickering thoughts are very powerful. And part of my identity when I am in Bodhgaya is that I'm such and such person who does have all these friends and does drink tea at these places. Of course. I do go to the Mahabodhi Stupa. I have friends here who can testify to that. But flickering thoughts, wow. Yeah, very powerful. So, and they are like the army. They are like the foot soldiers of the ego. They're like really the foot soldiers. They go around being very busy, being very inquisitive, trying to act very smart, whatever, and just feeding back information to central headquarters. We think there's a central headquarters. Shantideva was saying all is just like space, but we don't feel that way at all. It's not spacious at all. It's very crowded. In another book, which I must mention, which really amazed me that someone could write about Abhidharma so in such a way to make one so interested and begin to really understand some of the concepts. This book by Stephen B. Goodman, Buddhist Psychology of Awakening. Buddhist Psychology of Awakening, a marvelous book. There he's talking about, and we can see it in our own heads, this crowdedness. So he's saying actually one definition of delusion or klesha or the disturbing emotions is this crowdedness of mind, the space of the mind. It is naturally spacious. Our mind is naturally spacious. It's like space. We've filled it with all this stuff. It's so crowded that it becomes impossible to not be caught up in it and be aggravated by it. Like you are in a big crowd. It's like one would sit in the train in Bombay at Churchgate, and there would be a lot of space, especially if you took an early morning train. By the time you get to Dadar or Andheri, it's so full. And then it's hard to get out of the train. So that's what it's like in our minds. It could start spacious, but then all this stuff, and then it's like we feel we're in knots, we're tied up. And then there's a very heavy sense of I and me and mine, and the spaciousness goes out the window. So the teachings say ego is an illusion. It's like a dream, emotions. And that teacher didn't even put real or solid before emotion, just said an emotion has never existed, will never exist. But we are so caught up in our ignorance that we believe, we solidify, we reify these temporary mental events which arise and fall away. We identify with them, we get caught up, we cry and sob and get angry due to them, thus reinforcing this sense of a person, a me. So the initial practices are designed for us to not keep on chasing after and reifying and making solid and a big deal out of anything that arises in awareness. And that's not easy. A painful thought, an exciting thought, they're just regarded as thinking and we let them go. It's not easy because of the habit of reifying, solidifying, making concrete. And once you make something concrete, then you like it or you dislike it, usually. I hope what I'm saying is making some sense. Geshe-la is Geshe Dorje Damlul, he's very wise, I think, to say every few minutes, are you getting it? He says that, doesn't he? Are you getting it? Are you getting it? And I guess everyone online nods their heads or whatever. They are getting it. But are you getting some of this? Does it make any sense? And is it too much like ABC and not even getting to GH, you know? Am I just here because of star value, you know? Ah. Oh dear. So anyway, let's have some discussion. Otherwise, my ego will definitely be amplified when I get home a bit late and my cousin gets angry with me for getting late. Your battery is running low. You might want to plug in your PC. Thank you, sir. Huh? No hurry. I'm sure low doesn't mean ending yet. Thank you. I'll close this so-called window. Okay. Wow, you look very Tibetan, Joya, with that hat on your head. It's not a hat. What is it? Joya Roy, old Tushita hand. Such an old Tushita
It's
hand.
because I don't like the fan on my head.
Ale, yeah, I know the feeling. Yeah. But you have hair. I don't even have much hair. Yeah, yeah. Haha. You okay, sir? You're having a dilemma. You will have to sacrifice something. Yep. What to do? Yeah, yeah. So, and also for those who would like a non-Gelugpa, and here, of course, I'm being a heretic, talking of non-Gelugpa teachings in a Gelugpa center. So may Lama Tsongkhapa forgive me. But I find Chogyam Trungpa's way of looking at ego and its evolution very useful, which he elaborates in many of his books. How ego develops. Because ego, the self-grasping ignorance, arises, doesn't it, to use more sort of proper language, it arises in dependence on what do they call it? The what's that, Ajir Ji? The ignorance based on which is based on the view of the transitory collection. Yeah, the view of the transitory collection. We have a transitory, changing moment by moment, it is said, and we can check it out if it's true or not, changing moment by moment collection of body, you know, feelings, perceptions, consciousnesses, so forth. All of this mental and physical apparatus is changing moment by moment. And the wrong view of the transitory collection, perceiving this, being aware of this, we reify it. It's real. It's me. It's not just real, it's me. This is me. All all of this, this body which is changing all the time, and which has been changing since I was just a little bit of liquid in the mother's womb. Yeah, it's changing, and now, now getting older, not wanting to look in the mirror so much, changing, and then the emotions, the thoughts, the feelings, all of the perceptions, all of the mental events, they're always changing, aren't they? They're not staying the same. Rapidly moving from one to another. And if you read this book, Buddhist Psychology of Awakening, magnificent descriptions of how we move, as the author says, from one channel to the other. He looks at the different aspects of mind and so forth as different channels. He's got some very, very good ways of talking about the mind and its contents, and how to approach it, how to understand it better. So, all this is going on. It's changing. It's transitory. Ignorance holds on to it and says, that's me. That's a real me. That's a real me. So this, the wrong view of the view of the transitory collection, which Shantideva says is just like space. Okay, let's have some discussion. I haven't talked nearly enough about practices that can eliminate, but just in general, one would say any practice that begins to just observe without making a big deal out of anything that arises, seeing how it's impermanent and without any real substance. Any practice of that sort is going to reduce the power of this very strong, centralized I, me, mine process that we call ego. I should read just something from Wallace. He says, we do begin to give ego a limited job description. In the beginning, it has a huge job description and makes itself feel very, very powerful and important. But by doing some basic shamatha practice, he says the ego's role in this practice, because we're voluntarily, he says, relinquishing control of the breath and so forth, the ego's role in this practice is limited to selecting the object of attention, maintaining it, and taking countermeasures against excitement and lethargy. This is a limited job description because the vast majority of things that we could be doing and controlling have been eliminated. So we're giving the ego a little job. We're not giving the ego a big job where it'll go crazy and, make itself feel it's more and more important and powerful. We're giving it a small job. So in this practice, Wallace asks, are we directly challenging the delusional sense of self, the autonomous I that's in charge? Not yet, he says. This is still just shamat, which is being developed as a foundation for efficient and effective vipassana. This is page 182 in this book. So this is still an act of will that is happening. So our reified sense of self is still being employed. But it is still limiting the job description, as it were, of the ego. We are not allowing the ego to just go completely out of control, to get distracted all the time, to take certain thoughts very seriously and get upset or excited by them. That is being calmed down. So one could say the ego's way of maintaining itself is being contained somewhat in this practice. When we get deeper into this, of course, by releasing more completely, he says, and relaxing more deeply, deactivating habitual grasping at progressively subtler levels, then, of course, ego becomes more and more starved of any oxygen or any nourishment, and we begin to see it for the hallucination that it is. Whatever appears has no owner or controller. It simply manifests, plays itself out, and dissolves back into the space of the mind. And then, of course, we have the extraordinary teachings which are there in the Tantras and in Dzogchen and Mahamudra, where some of the statements being made are mind-blowing, because we relate even to the Dharma as something very real in terms of always words and concepts. And here they're saying things like, you are a Buddha, the mind does not exist, emotions do not exist, all is like space, and so on and so forth. So that is these statements are very disturbing to ordinary sense of self. We don't want to feel we are like space. We want to feel very real and solid and in control of everything as much as we can. Okay, now we do have discussion, and I'll stop talking so much. And I mean discussion. I'm not here to answer questions as an authority. Let's have some discussion. And I need to point the microphone that way, right? And it kind of picks people up. And how do I get people online for their voices to be heard, like we had the other day? Will it happen automatically? Amazing. Okay, we have a screen here and a speaker which will magnify your voices if anyone online wants to say something first, and then we'll, since you are so far away, you have bothered to join in from so far away. We can hear you first. Anybody?
Don't we have to unmute?
Oh,
we have
we have to unmute, yes. What is happening here? I go to participants. It's fine. No, you don't have to do anything. We are already hearing you loud and clear, Joya. Carry on. Oh, now you've muted yourself. Or someone has muted you. Have I muted you? Everyone, can you unmute yourself, Joya? Okay, good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Hello.
I didn't. Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So I was just wondering, this is all very fine, but as a very ordinary person, not necessarily a practitioner of shamatha or anything, what happens when you spontaneously, supposing you see somebody thrashing an animal in front of you, or maltreating a poor person in front of you, somebody powerful, kicking somebody, or someone maligning somebody who's dead in a terrible way, maligning them, then you get this spontaneous feeling of anger and wanting to give retribution to that person or stop things and just basically get involved in action. I'm talking of action. Then how do we perceive what we're thinking at that time? Because our intent is action, to stop something.
Right. And you're relating this to ego, that it builds up the ego, or
Yes.
what?
No, in the sense that, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a spontaneous, natural response to an environment,
Right.
which you feel you have to control.
Oh, that you feel you have to control.
No, in the sense that you want to stop the person from beating the animal or kicking somebody or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Spontaneously. Okay. Let's put it to our audience and see if I'm sure there's some useful statements will be made. We have old students, young students. We have our students who prefer to lie down and listen. We're all here today. Yeah. Some of them even go to sleep, but doing their dream yoga. I have to pretend to know what I'm talking about, which is easy for me because I'm very good at self-deception. Um, so I'm not quite sure what kind of response to give. What are you implying by your question, Joya?
I'm implying that this is not a matter of just sitting somewhere and working with how you perceive your mind or I or ego. It's when you go out in the world
Ah,
and things happen which kind of suddenly it's like your mind is on fire and you want to do something, some action. You're not, you see something which you want to deal with.
And you're saying that one wants to do it in a rather impulsive, violent way, or might
Well,
there be
impulsive and spontaneous, not necessarily
spontaneous?
violent.
Okay. So the spontaneity, what do you think? Would that depend on your previous habit of maybe engaging in a compassion motivation regularly in the morning? Would that affect the spontaneity in the sense that would it lead to action that would be very helpful rather than just vigorous and motivated by even aggression? Um, you know,
No, it's more like stopping aggression.
stopping
It's
aggression.
preventing,
Okay.
it's preventing some living being from being harmed, and
Yeah.
the perpetrator also is harming their own, I mean, themselves by bad karma.
So good. So
But
if you are thinking like this, it shows that you are a student of the Buddhist teachings and that you have absorbed the teachings. Because an ordinary person seeing that will either take out their video, their smartphone and start videoing it so they can send it to people, or they will get involved in an aggressive way by shouting or beating one of the participants. If they don't like dogs, they will join in beating the dog, you know. So it depends, doesn't it? Who you are, what your habits are, how you have been training your mind. So it may be spontaneous, but you see, for others, it could be spontaneous aggression and anger, and for others, a mixture of action, but feeling a lot of empathy, compassion for for the people involved, not only the so-called victim, but the so-called perpetrator. So it seems to depend on how one has been working with one's mind. Would you agree?
not sure.
Not sure, yeah. Jeffrey Hopkins gave this example in the introduction to A Truthful Heart, this wonderful book of his, which I've quoted from a lot before, especially the meditation on equality of self and others. He says there that, I think it's in that book in the introduction, this example of when he was very young and he just spontaneously jumped, I think, into a ditch to help someone who had fallen in the ditch, just spontaneously jumped in as well, although it was not sure whether there would be danger or not, but he just jumped in. So, yeah, I think, don't you think, as the teachers say, a lot of what we do is based on our sanskars, right? On our, how does one translate sanskars
Like that.
into proper English, Tibet House English? Imprints?
Sanskar. Imprints.
Sanskar? Huh?
Imprint.
Imprints,
Imprints.
no. Imprints, yeah. I think it depends on our imprints, don't you think? How we behave, by and large. A habit performed over countless lives, say, will create a very powerful imprint. So if you have in the past felt spontaneous feeling for beings who are being harmed or whatever, then that will again arise in this life spontaneously, without thought. Initially, that first moment without thought. And you will even be able to feel for the person engaging in the negative action. That seems like a very powerful imprint, which some people won't have, right? Because we like to divide things into the baddie, goodie and the baddie. And the person being kicked is a poor thing, and the person doing the kicking is a very bad, evil person who is not worthy of our care or compassion. So I think that's how I would answer it. Maybe people in the audience or online have thought of or feel to say something. Vikramji, good to see you again. Been a while. Do you have anything to say, sir?
Nothing at the moment, Kabir. Thanks.
Okay. Venerable, yeah, is that Namrata? You want to say something, please?
Yeah. I think my understanding of the whole piece is of how you can deal with difficult people with kindness. So it's not so much about the good person or the bad person, but the difficult person. And can kindness come with spontaneity to you in those situations, in those adverse situations? I'm sorry if I'm not making any sense, but that's my understanding.
It's clear. It's clear. I don't know if any of you have seen this. It just brought to mind this photograph of twins. They'd just been born a few days previously. One twin was in good health. One of the twins was in good health. The other one was, according to the nurses, fading very rapidly, they put it. And they felt that that twin would die. And then spontaneously, one of the twins put their arm around the other twin and kept their arm around the other twin. And that twin became better very quickly, And it's a very marvelous story, apparently truthful one. And then His Holiness loves talking about, was mentioned how, I think His Holiness, it could have been Thupten Jinpa, I'm not sure, had talked about how when children are shown pictures of other children in distress or crying, then they also feel spontaneous distress. They are very upset at seeing pictures of other children not happy, and they're very happy when they see pictures of other children happy. Of course, adults can also feel that, but from a very young age, children have some innate ability, it seems, to spontaneously, as His Holiness would say, act out of compassion rather than competitiveness or anger, or something like that. Although, of course, we know that children can also be very impetuous and throw tantrums and so forth. But there seems to be some innate quality, spontaneous, in other words, it arises immediately of empathy. Maybe it's not fully qualified compassion, of course, but there's a fellow feeling, right? There's a fellow feeling, which is very encouraging. Even the politicians we love to hate right now, or leaders, they all had some, and still would definitely have some vestige of that in their personalities. It's just the causes and conditions prevailing are so difficult for them, and their habit patterns are so deeply formed that basic goodness doesn't shine out very often. Of course, too much fear and insecurity and ideology. So that keeps people far away from their Buddha nature, if you want to put it that way. But I don't know, maybe we're never very far away from it. It's just we think we are.
Just to add, Kabir Ji, something.
Please, Venerable Tutan Tempa, yeah.
Is on what you're saying in response to Elaine, was it,
Right.
who had that question? Yeah, I think basically, yeah, same like what you're saying is the way we respond in any situation is, it speaks a lot about how we've been training and habituating our thoughts and our actions, and which are all essentially come back to our thoughts. How we respond come out of the way that we've been training our mind and habituating our mind. So yeah, like you said, if people have the instinct to get out their phone and start recording it, it means, you know, that it says a lot about, you know, what their mind is usually trained in, what kind of environment they're usually setting their mind in. Whereas if someone comes out and wants to take action, it shows, you know, that they and have empathy or compassion for both sides, or both parties that are involved. It also shows, you know, a strong mental training that they've been doing, you know, to have compassion despite whether someone's the victim or the perpetrator,
Right.
to have that equanimity. And yeah, so
Right.
yeah, just to add that. So in, I think, I don't know if Elaine was where Elaine was coming from the question, but it seemed that maybe
It was Joya. It was Joya's question. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. Just that actually, you know, some people think that doing retreat and meditation isn't necessarily directly effective to help someone who is in society, who's being oppressed by someone. But actually, you know, when we come out of that training that we've been doing, we can see the result of that training through our actions and through the words that we use. So, you know, there's definitely a place for that, so that we can become better respondents in society. That's what we're training for, right?
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Our group here at Tushita in the meditation hall today seem they've all entered a trance state. They're not talking. Oh, Yash wants to say something. Hold on. Oh, you see, I'm not paying attention. There's a hand raised. Where's the hand raised? Amita Saluja. Oh, I hope she's still there.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
If I may, please.
Sorry, Amita ji.
Not at all, absolutely. First, thank you very much. That was a beautiful talk. I'm very, very grateful to have been part of it. Just a thought, if we could, in a situation like that, as Joya had explained, try and go inward and understand also what is it that in our own ego that is compelling us to want to do a particular thing, to control a particular situation, to expect everything to be in a particular way. And if we can, while we try and figure that out, to also then see both victim and the perpetrator as one, and try and understand what it is that is making them do what they're doing, instead of just damning one and feeling bad for the other. So there could be just a little exercise to think of.
You mean to engage in that exercise in the spur of the moment?
Not in this, well, the introspection would obviously be afterwards, because in the spur of the moment, I'm assuming we would just do what we were thought was the right thing to do. But it would be good for future to do that introspection, to see what was it that I was expecting from that situation, that I thought I could control it, how many eyes there were there. And if we could just go back to how you spoke of the beginningness of kindness and understand that each and every one has that Buddha nature in them, and therefore there must be something which is compelling even the perpetrator to do as he is doing, and the victim to feel as he is feeling.
Of course, yes. Yes. Yeah, one sees clearly the work of the disturbing emotions at play, right? The kleshas. Yeah, and one could also start reflecting on karma. Although that may not be very trendy thing for some modern Buddhists to do, but yeah, why is this happening? What's the deeper cause behind it? You know, why do some people kill each other out of road rage? You know, whereas another person might just be a little annoyed, but just carry on, realize that this is how people do behave on the road or drive, but they wouldn't necessarily get out and strangle or kill the other person. Yeah, and that, anyway, yeah. What His Holiness said once really made an impression, because I was a younger student in those days. My mind was more receptive. And he said, I think it was lectures he gave in France and in a book which came out called Beyond Dogma. He said that the essence of the Mahayana is analytical meditation. He said that's a very, very important part of Mahayana Buddhism, is to be able to critically, he didn't use the word critical, he said analytical meditation, which is like critical thinking, isn't it? One is weighing things up, as you're saying, and checking carefully, what is going on? Why is it happening? Could it be looked at in another way? My initial response, how can one change that? So is that what you were also trying to get at, Amita Ji? Who's disappeared from the screen?
Exactly that. You just put it much better. Thank you.
It's how come not everyone is on the screen? Some
Yes,
people
yeah.
come and go from the screen. Maybe I should be on gallery. Aha. Okay. Yeah. So what else? What else? How could we make the ego completely unemployed? Completely kicked out of the organization. Sorry, don't need you anymore. You know that Zen story? Oh, sorry.
The thought is not good, but nevertheless, when we are really talking about the invasion of the ego, to me, it really appears that it is the external stimuli or external information which goes in and the mind accepts that that's really true. It's like saying that very often you have told me and you have introduced, okay, he comes from Kunu. He is from the village of Kunu Rinpoche. Well, I think I get that as if it's really real. But what is that I have to really do with Kunu Rinpoche? I have not taken his teaching at all. Okay, so that gives me the feeling, wow, I'm from that village. And I'm very close neighbor of Kunu Rinpoche. Similarly, a lot of people introduce me, like in Deer Park, or he has been the founding member of Deer Park, have been there for almost about 16, 17 years as part of the method. Well, I think I really feel that that generates a kind of wow, it's so great. And all those information goes as an imprint, and the ego formation really takes place. So the whole challenge is that when there is this information of this type, is it really possible to say the mind what is great? what is great. Probably, I think then maybe that imprint would not really take place very strongly. So I think because recently I was reading, I think almost on the same theme, the Trungpa Rinpoche's book, Cutting Through the Spiritual Materialism. I mean, spiritual materialism is nothing for him. It's really building up the ego based on the spiritual practices. So in one way, really saying that I'm a spiritual practitioner, but there's no spiritualism in that. It's almost like building my own ego based on that, whatever the spiritual practice I'm doing in that. So the challenge to me is that when there is the stimulus or the information at that level, can my mind be active and say, no big deal, no great, I should not really reify them. That is one. But the question is that, is the mind really trained to say nothing great? It is not really trained. Because the mind is working in a very sloppy way. And all this information, they are very active. I think I'm really reminded of a story of Sir Oscar Wilde. There was a lot of problems in England, and then there was a press conference, and the journalist asked, sir, a lot of theft is taking place in London. He said that yes. He said that, but will it stop? He said that no. He said, they said, why? Because we have large number of the police here. Then he said, police is only a functionary, thief is an artist. So similarly, all these informations which are coming, they are like an artist. They're certainly coming, and our mind is sleeping in that. So I think the challenge to me to cut the ego seems to be when this type of ego building information is coming, can we say nothing great? That's how I.
Yeah, thank you. Did people hear that? Yeah. So,
I think we cannot fire the ego in one day. It's a long process, and I think being observative is very, very important. Every time you get that message, as I mentioned, that every time you get that message which makes your ego strong, and you observe that thought, immediately you can unemploy it at that moment. Like I'll just give you a recent example. When Amitaji was telling that when you go out and see somebody thrashing somebody, you get this thought that why the perpetrator is doing this with the victim, and you see them as one. I was listening to her, and in that moment, my mind gave me a thought, oh, she does not know what she's talking about. And I suddenly thought, why I'm thinking like this? Am I thinking that I know better than her? And I think this was the thought which was boosting my ego when I said, oh, she doesn't know. I was trying to think that I'm better than her. And I think being observer is very important.
the letter that the sage Jyoti Krishnamurti wrote to a young man, and saying, please look very carefully at the arising and the abiding and ending of each thought, to really pay close attention to your thinking process. And of course, and then another, which is very connected with our talk here today, our discussion, is that happy is the man who is nobody. Happy is the man who is nobody. And this reminds me of the Zen story where a student comes to Zen master and says, I'm having a lot of problems in my mind. The Zen master says, show me your mind. Where's your mind? Show me your mind. And then obviously that student was right, you know, had been doing some practice, obviously. Yes. We've had a flash of illumination.
Kabir Ji, could you please put your mic a little closer? We missed that story.
So the
Ah.
story of the Zen master, his disciple comes to him and says, Master, I'm having problems with my mind. And the Zen master says, oh, really? Please show me your mind. Show me your mind. And that seems to solve that gentleman's problem. And of course, the other classic story, which is, I think, very appropriate. Excuse me. You know, this student who has been waiting outside in the cold at the gate of the Zen monastery because they wouldn't just let you in immediately. You had to show you were really serious. He'd been waiting out there for days. They hadn't let him in, and finally they let him in. And finally he got to see the master. And he said, Master, please teach me, you know, what is Buddhism? What is the Dharma? And the master writes the word attention on the board or whatever, some beautiful Chinese symbol, obviously, Japanese symbol, whatever. And the disciple isn't totally satisfied because, you know, he's been hanging out for days and has come a long way to see this master, and he's not satisfied with a one-word answer, obviously. So he says, yeah, thank you, master, but please now could you tell me what is the essence of the Dharma? And again, the master writes, attention. And then a third time he asks, you know, he gets the same answer, attention, attention, attention. But that seems interesting. A hint, perhaps, which connects, I feel, with this Krishnamurti's, what he may have meant by choiceless awareness, and, attention. In a moment of pure attention, is there ego? One could check, you know, the pure attention to something. Yeah. So happy is the person, the man, the woman who is nobody. Because as soon as we're somebody, seems like the trouble starts. Especially as in the English expression, we really think we're somebody, you know. Similar to what Gigi was saying about people identifying him, and he's introduced to someone who's in the same village as Lama Rinpoche. And you know, it's when people introduce me and say, oh, you know, Kabir went to Oxford. Oxford, you know, that sense. Even though the best thing about Oxford was the Buddhist Society, but, you know, he went to Oxford, so he's got some kind of special being, you know, and then ego goes up. But it's better to be nobody. Better to be nobody, but difficult. Because once you're somebody, you have to defend that, right? You have to keep on proving that you are that somebody. You have to pretend to be very intelligent and well-spoken, etc., etc., etc. It's a big burden. It's a big burden. Better to be nobody. And maybe then there's space to be many, many wonderful things. I don't know. But right now, one is too cluttered. There's too much clutter, too much stuff happening. I think we can stop there. My tendency is to go on, but I don't want to annoy certain family members. And because 9 o'clock is, I think, Ramayana on television. Is that right? Anybody watching Ramayana at 9 p.m.? Well, one of my family members is. And one has to account for that. Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much. Tomorrow morning, I'll be here at 9 a.m. Anyone want to do in-person meditation? I mean, in-person session. It'll be online too, I guess. Yes. So I don't know what the topic will be, but we'll start with some breath awareness and then graduate to some topic, which will come to me in a dream or something. I'm kidding. Yeah, so we'll do that. And then Thursday, we'll have some prayers for Rinpoche's quick return and maybe some anecdotes from my side on Rinpoche, whom I first met in 1979 and who was continuously kind to me for many years. Still kind, I feel. So we can have do that on Thursday. So thank you very much for joining, old friends and new. And yeah, take care. And we can dedicate also, of course, we should dedicate for the happiness and welfare of all sentient beings, for the lessening of disease, these horrible new diseases as predicted in the teachings. So this mpox, which is in Africa, very fatal disease, and then the starvation in various places, Sudan, Africa. I'm sure it's happening all over the world, many places. Maybe not Scandinavia, but you know, India, Gaza, many places. Then there's the warfare happening. People are killing each other, even though they're supposed to want happiness. So all of that is happening. We dedicate that, as Shantideva said, may all fighting with weapons become just a playful exchange of flowers. He says that in his 10th chapter, dedication chapter. And may all those who are weak and infirm and disabled and so forth, may they be endowed with majesty, he says. May they be endowed with wonderful bodies. So may all who are sick and ill and happy and lonely, may they be freed from that. May the teachings flourish. May we never be separated from the teachings and the qualified teachers, authentic teachers. May those teachers have long and healthy lives, continue to guide us. May His Holiness the Dalai Lama have long and healthy life and continue to teach when he comes back to India later this month. May all the Dharma centers and FPMT be more and more able to reach out and help more and more people. Please also pray for the Maitreya project in Kushinagar to carry on, albeit in a smaller way than we'd envision, but to be beneficial for others as much as possible. For Tushita Delhi to be more and more beneficial for beings. For all of us to be well and happy and have long lives practicing Dharma. May all who have anything to do with us in any way, may they be benefited. So whether they are kind to us or unkind to us, may it be a cause for their awakening. And to end with Shantideva's wonderful verse, as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, may we too remain in order to dispel the suffering of the world. And may all of our efforts, our practice help create the cause for the unmistaken reincarnation of our kind teacher Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kabir Ji.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kabir. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Elaine.
Pranam, Kabir Ji.
Pranam, pranam. Oh, it's a familiar voice from Dehradun. Are you sure you want to stop recording to the cloud? Wow. Yes. To the space. Weird, huh? Yes.